Hey guys, welcome back. So I've been asked for some advice on perks and just some general tips on killing floor 2. So I wanted to mix that in with a bit of a perk review because I know it's still in early access and things are changing here and there. So I just wanted to give you my advice and my thoughts on what you should choose and what I think of where the perks are at the moment. So obviously I'm going to go from the top down, so let's start with Berserker. Nice and simple. Perk damage. Obviously, you're going to get this with every single perk, and that's totally fine. Damage resistance, you're in melee. Damage resistance is something very important. Clots can't grab you. That's another easy, obvious one for Berserker. I think that's totally fine. But the reason I'm going through all these is night vision capability. Now, there was a time, for those of you who didn't know, that your torch was focused on the direction your gun was facing, because of course, the torch would be on your gun. So it made sense that Berserker would have night vision, simply because otherwise it would be difficult for them to see in the dark. This is no longer necessary. Your torch always goes directly forwards. So I think replacing this with something else would be useful, because night vision isn't actually that useful at all. This is quite a simple one with the first one. Now, something I'm going to go to here and there throughout the video is my idea that your choice here, between any two as you go down, should be a real choice. There are some that are incredibly obvious here and there in the different perks. So I'll point these out when we come across them. But for the moment, something simple and mainly for the newer players is Dreadnought. Obviously the extra health is very useful. Now you can always think about this as, if you play on a higher difficulty, trying to tank those massive hits from flesh pounds can be really useful. But don't forget, as you get to higher level, you've also got the damage resistance. So just think about that. That is still a useful one though. I know I tend to use this one a lot, simply because I'm not very good with Berserker. Now, Skirmisher, moving faster, sprint faster, and regenerate health. This is also a very useful one. Now, as you play on the higher difficulties, obviously Zeds move faster, they're tougher, and they just do more damage. So I think, at least a lot of people would agree with this, is that faster movement becomes so much more important. This does of course make you more of a Skirmisher. Obviously, you're basically just keeping away from the Zeds, moving in, killing a few, thinning out the numbers as you go along. It's basically how you actually play the higher difficulties, I find. That's certainly how I play them, at least. This is the tanky one, this is the extra movement one. Now, this is an actual difficult choice to make. Obviously, you could say, well, this fits my playstyle quite easily. That's quite an easy one. Now, that's understandable. These choices are very easy for some people, but the point I'm making is that this is a choice of playstyle, and some of you think, oh, I could actually use these either way I go. As I said, I'm going to be going into this in more detail when it actually comes up, but some of them are just like, well, obviously I'm going to pick this one, why would I pick anything else? Now, again, this is more of a playstyle one. Again, I use Vampire, healing more points of health for every Zed I kill. I think the added attack speed is a bit odd. It's as if they're saying, well, you've got to a point in Berserker where you just need to attack faster. Maybe if you actually go back and replace the whole night vision thing with faster attack speed as you level up, that would make a bit more sense. Because they're literally adding in 20% faster attack speed regardless of what you choose. So maybe just adding attack speed as you level up would make a lot more sense. I don't know, that's just what I think. I think just chucking it in as soon as you hit level 10 is a bit odd. But, okay, anyway. This is what I choose as someone who isn't very good with Berserker. And of course, your other option is simply 25% more damage. Now, you're basically saying, do you want 4 points of health per Zed, or 25% more damage? As you go up on the harder difficulties, this is an incredibly obvious choice, because you have to, because otherwise 4 points of health per Zed isn't very much, and depending on which one you pick, you're either regenerating it anyway. Every 4 seconds, you get the same amount of health as if you kill a Zed. Now, 4 points of health isn't very much, and 25% more damage? Obviously. So you think, well, didn't you just say a minute ago you picked Vampire? Well, yes, I do, because typically when I actually use Berserker, it's because I'm either in a massive group of people on multiplayer, and 25% extra damage doesn't really mean much to me. It's either that or I'm doing a map review, so I'm playing on normal, and it's easy anyway. That's just where it is at the moment, but the reason why I'm trying to pick out on this one is 20% faster attack speed. It's odd they just cram it at you at level 10. I think that could be tweaked a bit. I still think maybe that should be something passive that generates as you level up. I mean, it goes up to level 25, right? So, I don't know, maybe 0.5 extra attack speed per level. I don't know, just there's something passive to add in, or it starts at 5% and then you get an extra 1% per level. Something like that. I think that's probably a better way to do it. Anyway, right, close combat. Resistance and parry. So, damage resistance is incredibly important as a Berserker because basically Zeds are melee focus and you're fighting them at point blank range, so you're going to be taking damage regardless of what you do. 20% resistance to all damage, very useful straight off. And of course, sonic and poison damage, you're going to have to take that if you fight a bloat or a siren. That just happens. And then of course, parrying with this one, parrying reduces incoming damage by 40% and increases both melee attack speed and melee damage by 5% and then 35% for 10 seconds. Now, that's incredibly useful. That's basically parry, gain a buff, and it reduces the damage you get while you parry by 40%, which is good. But I don't like this one personally, but again, this is a playstyle choice. Now, this is still an actual tough decision, because getting that kind of buff, I'm guessing it doesn't stack, but as long as you get attacked once per 10 seconds, which you can easily get to do for yourself, then that's an ongoing buff, and that's really, really good. Personally, I'm going to pick this one when I can, because this is passive. I'm more of a person who picks these kind of passive things, so I think it's just a lot simpler. And then the next thing is for power, Smash and Massacre. Now, hard attacks with Perk melee weapons do 50% more damage, do 25% more damage on head hits, and have 200% more stumble power. I can't stress how important stumble power is, especially on the higher levels, where if you want to hit a Zed and he just stumbles back rather than hitting you back, that's so useful. In fact, if anything, if they keep stumbling, that makes resistance less useful for the general 20% resistance to all damage, because if someone's not hitting you because you keep knocking them down on their arse, then that's just so much more useful. Again, this comes down to more of a playstyle choice, because Massacre, light attacks with Perk melee weapons do 30% more damage, and all attacks with Perk melee weapons are 5% faster. Again, if you stack this stuff up, you can go super fast and just, well, basically turn into a blender. And light attacks are something you often do more than the hard attacks. Obviously with a faster movement you can sort of dip in, do a hard attack, then back out. But again, this is more of a playstyle thing. I think this is still a difficult choice because extra attack speed is good, 30% more damage on light attacks, very good. Because this bonus damage is hard attacks, which of course are much slower. However, 25% more damage on head hits, if you're a bit more accurate, then I would imagine this is something you would pick over Massacre, simply because if you're better at Berserker, then why wouldn't you pick this? However, you could argue that Smash is a bit more of an obvious option, but this is just what I think. I still think this is a reasonable choice, but perhaps leaning towards Smash as a better one. It depends what your preferences are. In Advanced, this is obviously during Z time, so heal 25% health and Z's close to you try to flee when you enter Z time. Now, this can be very useful. As soon as Z time pops, you basically heal a big chunk of your health. Bear in mind this stacks with Dreadnought with increased health. This is 25% of your total health, and everything runs away from you. This is basically a bit of a breather when you're actually entering Z time. It's like, oh thank god, everything's moving away from me, I can just chill for a bit, that's nice. And the other option is, during Z time you attack with perk weapons and move in real time. As in, this is only if you're actually holding a perk weapon. Now, this is the run speed option again. This is very useful in the harder difficulties when all of a sudden you just need a boost to get the fuck out of there. You could argue this does the same thing, which I would say it does. Sure, you don't get to move super fast, but if everything is moving away from you, then you can kind of think about it as you've now got your escape path. I'm trying to think of a way to put it. Yeah, escape path. Because if they're all close around you, they're all now moving away and you can sort of weave in and out and get away from them. Now, the reason why I would say this is a much better option personally is if you're suddenly surrounded by Zeds and you think, well, I'm fucked, I'm going to die. No, Z time pops, they all run away, you can get out, pop a heal off if you want, because you're also getting a passive heal, instantly 25% health, that's a lifesaver. Whereas this, let's say they're all surrounding you, and you think, yeah, I'm fucked. Z time, you get extra attack speed, which means you might be able to cut your way out of it, but that movement speed is useless because you can't move anyway. You know, if they've made a ring around you, you're gonna die anyway, you don't get the instant health, and you're basically screwed. This is a lifesaver, whereas if you're actually doing okay, you know, there's just Z time, lots of Zs nearby, then this is obviously the damage one. This is really turning into a blender, but that's just what I think. I'm actually overall quite happy with Berserker. I do think when it comes to weapon attack speed, they need to sort of fix the passive stuff, but overall, this is good. Now, moving on to Commando. So, as for the passive perk bonuses, weapon damage, again, that's an obvious one. Cloaked enemy and health bar, I absolutely love this. This is why I'm so much of a fan of Commando. Simply being able to see how much health the Zeds have is very useful, especially with the tough ones like Skrakes and Flesh Pounds. Everyone else gets this, it's not just you. So, this is 50 meters away from you, but at this point in level 20, 50 meters away from me is pretty much where the entire team's going to be. Z time extension, my god, I love this so much. And of course, a passive reload speed, that's a lot. That's just amazing. I love having reload speed. In fact, I always pick reload speed if I can. To me, not picking reload speed is dumb. Why would you never ever pick anything other than reload speed? But again, this is a personal preference, I'll get back to that. Now, night vision. To be honest, if you just look at that and compare it to the passives of other perks, we're actually adding on quite a lot of stuff to Commando. Again, I never use night vision because I just don't think night vision is useful at all. I think, realistically, that's something you'd probably give to somebody else. Berserker doesn't need it. Commando's got a shitload of stuff anyway, but if you want to give it to Commando, sure, go for it. Now, onto the actual skills. Again, here we go. Reload speed or ammo. Now, you can really just chug away at somebody with increased ammo, like in your actual weapon, because an extra 50% is actually pretty good. And you could argue, well, if I don't need to reload as often, then I don't need to reload faster if I'm hardly doing it. No, that's not true. I suppose you could say this is again my personal preference, but you very regularly get the option to just have a quick reload. And when it's that fast, it doesn't matter if your magazines are actually larger because you can just refill them so quickly. And I'm sure many of you have been in the situation whether you've picked this one or this one, where there are Zeds around you and all of a sudden you need to reload because you're out of ammo. Now, a lot of the times people will just switch weapons if they really have to, or they'll risk it and tank the damage. Now, you may have a big magazine, but if you can't reload fast enough to get the shot out, you could die. Now, on the lower difficulties like normal and perhaps hard, this isn't as much of a deal, but if you're playing on the harder difficulties, you have to get your ammo back fast, otherwise you're screwed. Now for me, throughout all of the perks, tactical reload, it's just such an obvious choice. But again, I am well aware that that's my opinion, and this is still a choice. Now eventually we'll get to the point where I will start actually hacking away at some of these perk choices because they're bad. Now, for this, increases damage with your pistol and your knife by 110% and increases weapon switching speed by 50%. This is kind of an emergency one, and increases stumble power for perk weapons by 150%. This is just generally good. Now, here's the thing, fallback. Switching to another weapon is very useful. However, the only reason I can see for switching to another weapon is if you haven't picked tactical reload, or you're just completely out of ammo for the current weapon. Understandable, it happens. But really, how often do you switch to your pistol and, I don't know why they picked knife, but sure, might as well chuck it in there as well. Don't know why you would use your knife so often, but here's the thing. If you switch to your pistol, you're probably fucked anyway, and if you're doing well, you're never going to switch to your pistol anyway, because you've got perk weapons which have the bonus damage. So again, I think this is a very odd choice. It's useful for the weapon speed, but I just think that, again, this isn't really much of a choice. As I mentioned when I was talking about level 5, this is just dumb. Fallback is dumb. It's just, your other option is increase stumble power for perk weapons by 150%. That's so good. And just in case you're listening to this thinking, well, what does stumble power do? If you're shooting a Z, it will, what stumble means is they'll kind of stagger back a bit. They're like, oh, they kind of lose their balance. Now, this isn't as big a deal on like normal, but if you didn't know, the more you go up in the difficulty, apart from extra speed, extra damage and toughness, Zeds also gain extra abilities. Now, you'll already know about how the Flesh Pound and the Skrake charge at you. Stumble power cancels those out. Now obviously, okay, if you didn't know this already, shooting them in the legs for all Zeds has a more likely chance to stumble them. Now just having an all-round 150% bonus to stumbling them, this can cancel out some of the things that Zeds do all the time. It also, for example, if you get Husk coming at you, I'm pretty sure you can actually stumble them, and obviously if you stumble them, they won't actually continue with their shot, they'll just stop firing and like have to get back on their feet. Stumble power is so goddamn useful. If you're going to put fallback in as a perk choice, do not put it next to impact rounds. I think fallback is actually okay, I can see why you would put that in, but if anything, I think it's more of a choice, you know, just glancing at this quite quickly, that makes more sense next to tactical reload. So, do you want to like reload faster or switch weapons faster? That makes more sense than putting it next to something like this, which is just so goddamn good. Anyway, level 15. Total health and armor by 25% or 20% more ammo for each perk weapon. Now, this is really good because obviously you want to go with, do I want to be tougher or do I want to have more ammo? Now, if you're perhaps kind of new to the game, then, well, you've got to level 15, so I guess you should have had your practice by now, but here's the thing, health and armor is just very good, and 20% more ammo is probably for like the larger waves. If you're playing with other people, obviously it stacks up the amount of Zeds you fight, so you have to fight more of them. More ammo is just generally very useful. However, if your aim is really good, then you won't need this as much. Obviously, if you just want to spray and pray, then you're going to need ammo quite often, but I find personally, I just pick this one because it's just generally useful, and me running out of ammo doesn't happen very often at all. Like, if we're really high up in the waves, I probably have 2 weapons. And of course, yeah, I can fall back to my pistol, but that's very rare. So I don't... Personally, this again is a personal choice. Personally, I don't think I need 20% more ammo as much as the extra health and armor, because obviously if you're getting smacked down by an actual flesh pound, then you need this. Again, this is a personal choice. This is actually difficult for some people to make, so I think this is fine. Basically, I think that when you look at the skills trees, you should be thinking, that's a tough choice, or, okay, this one fits my playstyle a lot more. That's the choice you should make. You shouldn't look at it and go, tactics? Why the hell would I want damage on my pistol? Stumble power? You should never be in that situation. It's literally a difficult choice you're supposed to make, or a playstyle choice. You shouldn't think, well, duh, impact rounds. Anyway, level 20. So, increase the damage of perk weapons by 25% and reduce their recoil by 50%. This helps me a lot as someone who actually wants to be more accurate and often switches to single shot rather than burst fire or auto fire. This is just amazing. It's also increased damage, so when you're playing on the higher difficulties, you want the damage all the time. It also means if you switch to single shot, for example, if you're playing Commando using the bullpup, it has single shot. It means you can single shot all of the base Zeds, all of them. Like at the level I am, basically, the extra damage with that, then single shot is just so useful. And then magazine capacity of perk weapons by 100%. I say this is too an obvious choice unless... Okay, here's the thing. There isn't a class in the game right now that uses LMGs. I think if they put that kind of class in the game, or perk should I say, I'm probably going to be calling them classes a lot, I'm too used to saying that, but if there's an LMG perk they put in the game, see this and this, that's cool, but you don't need extra ammo if you kill them faster. This is probably just a personal choice, but I think increased damage by 25%, 50% less recoil, this makes your guns accurate, more damaging, or you get double magazine capacity. I just don't see why you'd want that. I mean, if you picked Eat Lead and high capacity mags, I would say that's a good enough reason to actually switch that over tactical reload. It's like, well, if I just have 150% more ammo in my gun, I don't need to reload as often. You know what? I agree, but you're missing out on reload speed and 25% damage. Personally, I think that's too obvious a choice, so that's... I actually have a lot more critique about Commando than I thought, but the thing is I don't tend to mention it much because I just go, obviously, playstyle choice, obviously. So it's not something I actually bring up very often, but I think when you're coming to actually starting to review the different perks, it actually kind of stands out quite a bit. Then of course, Z time. So, during Z time, reload perk weapons at full speed and switch perk weapons twice as fast. This overrides kind of some of the things we've come across earlier on, because bear in mind, when it says full speed, it means full speed as in out of Z time. Now, if you've also got this, you're reloading super fast in Z time, which is really useful. And then switching perk weapons twice as fast. If you pop into Z time and you need to switch weapons, you don't need fallback anymore, because you still switch them at 200% speed. The extra 50% isn't going to make much of a difference. Bear in mind, if you're playing a Commando, you're going to be in Z time quite a lot. That's kind of what Commandos do. They increase Z time. Yeah, things like Tactician, it makes fallback even more useless. It's just really good. But then, your other option is, during Z time you do 3% more damage with perk weapons and shoot 3 times faster with all guns. It seems like what they're doing with this one is thinking, well, if you've got an extra 150% ammo, machine gunner, that's going to be really good. However, I think that kind of leads into more of a playstyle choice, though 3% more damage, I don't know. This isn't something I would pick, definitely not. I don't think the 3% damage is worth it, and 3 times faster with all guns, if you're getting punched in the face by a flesh pound, you're going to be grateful for that. But I think if you then look at extra damage, the fact that you can tank the hits anyway, you've got stumble power, which means he may stop hitting you and just like fall on his arse. Okay, right, that's actually knockdown. I should be actually going through this quite accurately here. There is a thing called knockdown which will make him fall over. Stumble power is different, but basically what I'm trying to say is, if he just stops hitting you and stumbles back, then it doesn't matter if you're shooting 3 times as fast because you've got the stumble power. So, depending on what you've chosen earlier on, it can make things like this a lot less useful. And it's like, well, my reload speed, I'm shooting at full auto anyway, so reloading at full speed with the actual increased speed on the base, then why not? And of course, if you run out of ammo because you've got 50%, 100%, you've skipped out on those, it doesn't matter because you just switched to another weapon twice as fast. Now, on to support. This was definitely my favourite class back in Killing Floor 1. Let's see what they've got. I actually don't think support is much of a supportive class, it's more of, I have shotguns. And sure, they do actually have some supporting abilities, but I honestly think there should be a perk that is actually support, that isn't more focused around damage, kind of like the field medic, but is more focused around actually just supporting other people. That sounds kind of obvious, but just think about it for a minute. You actually look at what they've got. Welding proficiency, very useful. You always need someone to actually weld the doors. Shotgun damage, obviously perk weapon damage is kind of a flat thing you get in all of them. Shotgun penetration, that's very useful. Basically it means if you shoot the Z, then your shots will go further forwards, dealing with damage to ones behind, and further and further and further. So your shots go through more Zs before they stop doing damage. And of course, extra ammo, that's always useful. Strength, I'm guessing that's melee. I actually don't know what that does. And of course, you've got the ammo backpack, that's very helpful to everybody. And door repair, that means that if a door has broken and fallen over, you can repair it and bring the door back. Again, very, very useful. This class has a lot of useful stuff. Now, for the skills. You've got increased magazine capacity by 50%, or increased reload speed. Again, this is a playstyle choice, as I've mentioned before. Reload speed, every single time. Because I think magazine capacity, I've not actually tested this, but this doesn't apply to the double barrel, because it's only got 2, tubes in the actual thing. I could be wrong with that, but somebody test that for me. Somebody post in the comments below, is that actually a thing? Does that apply to the double barrel? Because it's double barrel. Double literally means 2. So, anyway, obviously, reload speed, every time. Health by 50% or increased damage by 30%. Again, do you want to be tougher or do more damage? Now, 30%, that's actually more than you got in Commando and Berserker. 30% damage, that's too much of an increase to pass away. Again, this is a gameplay choice, so if you want the extra health, sure, go for it. I mean, you can do that, but I'm actually leaning towards that this is not only a personal preference, but this is just better, flat out better. But again, I'm not sure if that's my bias coming in. I would critique it, but I can see why a lot of people would say, no, this is just playstyle choice. Now, armor piercing shot, greatly increased penetration with perk weapons, although I do pick this, because bear in mind, as I said before, the penetration is how many things can it go through before it stops doing damage. Now, the reason why I pick this one is even though it doesn't say how far it goes, it doesn't actually tell you the increase, it just says greatly. So I guess whoever wrote this, it's up to their interpretation of how much greatly means, whereas the only critique I'm going to give this is, please, for God's sake, actually say how much it increases it by. Don't just say greatly. It actually doesn't help when people are trying to make this choice. But anyway, I picked that because I like it, because the alternative is decreases shot spread of perk weapons by 50%. Now, if you're going to blast something in the face, very useful, because of course, the wider the spread, the more pellets just straight up miss. If you're going to shoot something like in the torso, then it's not a big deal, because unless it's far away, you're going to hit it with all the pellets anyway. Whereas decreasing the shot spread can actually be very useful, although I tend to like shooting big chunks of Zeds, because if they all clump up, extra penetration, big clump of Zeds, wide spread of the actual shot, then it's just going to go through all of them, one shot, they're all down. Which means I don't need this as much, which is part of my choice. But again, this is a preference. This is actually a difficult one. At least I would say. Do you want to be more accurate, or do you want to just shoot through more things? Because if you can line them up, that's actually really good. Bear in mind, if you've got a flesh pounder or a scrape punching you down, if you're just blasting away point blank, if there are any Zeds behind it, they're not going to start crowding around you because you've just killed all of them while you're shooting somebody else. I think this is a good choice. It's actually quite a difficult one, but personally, this is the one I pick. Resupply pack. This isn't what I have at the moment because the last time I played this I was playing solo. Now, getting 30% more ammo and armor restored by interacting with you once per wave. You can carry up to 20% more ammo for perk weapons. Again, this is actually really good. Now, I don't need extra ammo for this class because it's now at level, 22? So, having extra ammo passively, it makes this little extra bit here pointless. That's my opinion. This is pointless now. If you've got to level 20, your passive bonus is enough to cover this. You don't need the extra ammo. You just straight up don't. Unless your aim is terrible. And of course, you don't need to shoot as often if you've got increased penetration. But still, getting the extra ammo and extra armor is incredibly useful, especially on the harder difficulties. People will rely on you for this sort of thing once per wave. They will need this. So if you're playing in a team, get this. Now again, stumble power, that is also very useful. As I said before with Commando, it's just so goddamn good. The thing is if you're playing in a big team game, if you're the only guy who's playing support, pick this, because if you're playing in a team, you work as a team. It's not all about you, which is what this is. Obviously, if you pick this in single player, that's the right choice, but this is so goddamn good. 30% extra ammo and armor, this goes to your entire team. On a full team, 5 people are getting the bonus of this, which way outweighs concussion rounds, but this is a difficult choice. However, as you'll see in Field Medic, it's one of those things where if you're playing in a team, you're dumb if you don't pick the team option. Now, for the Z-Time bit, during Z-Time your perk weapons penetrate through any targets they hit, or during Z-Time your perk weapons shoot in near real time. Again, the same complaint I have with this, stop saying greatly and stop saying in near, because you need to be specific. Not that anyone here from Tripwire is actually watching this video, but you need to be specific. If someone's going to make a choice, actually put the values in. This, in Z-Time, this completely outweighs this. I understand that, but you're not in Z-Time all the time. This is actually a difficult choice, I think, and I like that. I like seeing a difficult choice. When I hit level 25, I want to look at this and go, I actually don't know which one to pick. This is very good though. However, it does outweigh the choices I've made before, so I would certainly pick this one. Basically, as soon as Z-Time comes off, imagine this with the AA-12. You can just tread everything. Again, a difficult choice, but I'm quite happy with that. So, Field Medic now, syringe recharge rate. This isn't just the medic kit you're actually holding, you actually have the ranged medic kit in your guns, so you can heal people from a distance. And of course, syringe potency, it means you basically heal people for more, 40% more specifically. Bloat barrel resistance. This is an odd one to chuck in, because I can't see, obviously it's nice just to have, but why are you getting hit by bloat bile as a medic? I don't understand why this is put for Field Medic, because you shouldn't be getting hit by this anyway. Movement speed, oh my god, this is good. This is why I like playing Field Medic on harder difficulties so much. This is just really useful. In fact, if anything, I would quite happily trade this out for a bonus to the movement speed. Make this better, not 0.5% per level, sorry, 0.4% per level. Make it 1% per level. I'd be fine, scrap that, extra movement speed, it'd be so goddamn useful. Armor bonus, of course, very useful, I won't complain about that. Although, personally, I prefer it as a health bonus. I'm guessing the reason why it's not a health bonus is because you can heal yourself so easily that would make it a bit broken, perhaps? That's just what I think, but it's nice to have, I won't complain. So, here's the first choice. Increase total health by 25%, healing your teammates will heal you with 10% of your total health. If you're playing a field medic properly, my god, this is useful, because one of the problems that people seem to have when they're playing medic is to think, I have taken damage, better heal myself first, even though that teammate over there is pretty much dying. This, you just need to focus on healing your teammates. Now, if you're getting smacked to pieces, your teammates, if they're playing a team properly, should be helping you out a bit. This is kind of a standard thing across all online games. Always help the healer. The reason they're there is to help you, so give them a hand every now and then. So basically, this means you're healing yourself and your team at the same time. However, the other option, Resilience, now increases damage resistance 1% per health point lost up to 50%. This gives you up to 50% damage resistance, obviously. However, if you're getting smacked around a lot, you're probably playing solo. So again, I think the only reason you'd actually pick Resilience is if you're playing solo. Even though you get an increased amount of health for just picking this one. Personally, I think this is too obvious an option to pick, even when playing solo, because you can heal yourself so much more. The passive armor bonus is nice, but having extra health, healing 25% of your health, is so easy as a medic, especially at my level. It's just, I'm kind of slipping into the more, this just doesn't compete with symbiotic health. It just doesn't. That is my opinion. I think this is too obvious a choice to pick this one, even if you're playing solo. Now, movement. Shooting teammates with healing darts increases their movement speed by 10% for 5 seconds. This can stack up to a 30% bonus. So shoot them 3 times, that's extra 30% speed. Very useful. Now, Combatant Doctor increases magazine capacity of perk weapons by 50% and movement speed by 10%. If you're playing solo, obviously going to pick this one. Now, before I actually go on to these next ones, this stack of 3 is very, very useful. Very useful. But I'm actually going to go and do all 6 of these at the same time, because there's something I want to go over particularly. Now, this is something that people actually have quite an opinion on, as in, how many of these do you stack compared with these? Personally, I stack all 3, I want my healing darts to be the best, but I know that's not always the best option, and there are a lot of opinions going around about this, which is best. So, the other option at level 15, shooting teammates with healing darts increases the damage they inflict by 5% for 5 seconds, stacks up to a 20% bonus. So shoot them 4 times, not 3, then that maxes out. Compared with perk weapons can poison Zeds, inflicting poison damage over time. This is okay. It's not a massive amount of damage, but it does mean is you can shoot something really tough, then run away for it for a bit, and it still chips away at their health. And then this one, shooting teammates with healing darts increases their damage resistance by 10% for 5 seconds, this stacks up to 30%. That's shooting them 3 times, not 4. So you may be able to see where I'm going with this. And that competes with increases damage by 20% with perk weapons. So, which one do you pick? This, obviously you need to shoot them 4 times for it to stack up. What it competes with is the worst one of these 3. Now, when I focus on playing field medic, I focus on healing my team a lot more than shooting things too much. So I like to stack all 3. I can totally see why you'd actually swap these out, because you're actually, if you shoot them 3 times to like buff them up, that's only the 15% bonus. It's not 30% because it's 5% per. Damage resistance, I can see why you would actually want 20% more damage. I would say, obviously if you're playing solo, you're going to pick all of these 3, because this is teammate stuff. But I can see why here you've got the option of doing the extra damage. If you're in a smaller team, I would say this is probably better. Like if you even want like a 2, 3 or maybe even 4-man team, you could argue, this is the better choice. But if you're in a big like 6-man team, then I can see why you'd go for these. Now, because of the amount of talking I've done about this is what I'm talking about. This should be a difficult set of choices here, and it is, because how much do you want to buff your darts compared to how good do you want to be? Because movement speed, very useful. However, the argument with these 2 is that people aren't always running away when you're healing them. Sometimes they will just sit there and continue fighting, which means you've buffed their movement speed for no reason because they're not moving. Obviously it depends. If you're playing with friends, maybe like on a higher difficulty, then they will know when to start backing off, and this is actually more useful. But generally, this isn't as useful as it seems simply because people don't always move around as much. I mean, I'm sure you've shot people with your healing darts many times and they're not moving very much at all. Magazine capacity of weapons by 50% and extra movement speed for yourself by 10%. Very, very useful. I can see why you'd obviously pick this over that one. I actually don't. I always go for these ones because it's quite a simple choice, but that's actually a difficult decision when you look at the grand scheme of things. This one, I actually think that increasing someone's damage, especially if they're on low health, they're probably getting smacked around a lot, that's too goddamn useful to switch over this, which I would only ever pick in solo because the actual poison damage isn't that much, especially if you'd like, for example, pick this, the actual regular weapon damage. Now if you're fighting lower health Zeds, this becomes very useless, because if you just one-shot someone in the head with a starter pistol, even the medic one as well, then why have you got extra poison damage? You just one-shot something. There is no extra damage. Do you see what I mean? So again, I can see why you'd pick this one over that one. Now, the extra damage, very useful. Again, this is one of the reasons why I picked this lot over these ones. However, on the harder difficulties, you can't be expected to basically babysit your healer. So again, there is a very good reason why you'd pick this over this. However, this is damage resistance. If someone's on low health, the last thing you want is for a Zed to run up to them and just smack them dead because they're on low health and while you're trying to heal them, or even a husk shot from long distance. So if you start healing someone, increase their damage resistance, it means the next thing that hits them isn't going to do as much damage anyway, which means that you can actually start stacking their health up. Because bear in mind, if someone's on low health, if you shoot all the darts you have charge for, they're not on full health yet. I think you can heal up to around 50% on somebody, but bear in mind that's if they're on 100. So you can't max somebody out. The best you can do is shoot them 3 times, then run over to them with your healing kit, and heal them again. That does about 75%, as in of their health if they're on 100, so about 75 health. Around that. This isn't of course completely accurate numbers, but that's about the best you can do. So actually being able to heal them up and then give them damage resistance to make sure they don't like collapse and die on you, again, very useful, but 20% extra damage, again, very good. That's an obvious single player choice, but this, I can see why you'd swap them out. I mean, you might say that if you're starting to heal someone while you're doing that, they're probably going to be fine. You're just giving them a massive amount of health, and there's going to be multiple people shooting whatever they're shooting at. They should be okay. So again, there is a lot of decisions involved in the actual field medic, and it can be quite a tricky one. So I think when it comes to making decisions on skills, the field medic gives you the most difficult choices. Z time. So you release a healing gas during Z time, healing teammates nearby. This makes you more combat focused, as if there's people around you who are like needing a bit of health, all of a sudden they're healed. Not necessarily to full, because again, this is the thing, it doesn't say how much it heals it by. You need to put in the numbers here. So the other option is during Z time, damaging Zeds with perk weapons will slow them for 30% and do massive amounts of poison damage. Again, how much poison damage? It doesn't say. However, slowing them down by 30% is very useful, especially the higher difficulties you go. Now this is especially useful for the big tough guys like the Flesh Pounds and the Skrakes. Again, here it says close by, it doesn't say what the range is. Now personally, when I get here, I'm going to pick Zedative, because bear in mind that when something's in Z time, that's the best chance you've got to shoot things. Of course it is only in Z time, but still. This is still a difficult choice. I may actually pick this one simply because, first of all, I'd like to know how much it heals and know what the range is, but it means that I don't have to worry too much about my teammates, because if they're being topped up by this, it's less likely I'm going to have to switch to my actual healing stuff and start focusing on them rather than the enemies. Because of course I could be in trouble as well. Right, Demolitionist. I absolutely love this class, I do like to blow stuff up. Of course, basic weapon damage, that's an obvious one, all perks have this. Explosive resistance, very useful, especially if you have the thing that I have, which is your grenades, well, your dynamite specifically, explodes on point blank. There have been quite a few times before I had higher explosive resistance where I used to kill myself doing that. But again, it's just useful to have. Obviously, some of the Zeds explode as well. Extra explosive ammo. This is good because bear in mind, a lot of the higher level stuff, especially the RPG, it can really do with extra ammo. It's a 5th per level, so it's not a huge amount, so when you get to level 25 it'll only go up to 5, but still it's very useful. The extra grenade for everybody, very good. Door traps, especially if you're holding down an area, these are very useful because the moment the Zeds break through the door, all of a sudden the door explodes. Reactive armor. I'm going to admit, I actually don't know what that does, so I'm going to pass on that one. Somebody in the comments below can tell me how stupid I am, and it's quite obviously this. How did I not know that? But go ahead. And now this. This again is a difficult one. Extra damage by 25%, amazing. Here we go. They've actually put in how much faster it is rather than increase his reload speed. It's actually put the value in. I love it when they do that. But yeah, 20% faster reload, amazing. I always pick the reload, I've said this myself before. And as I've said with other perk stuff, increases knockdown, as in falling over, and stumbling, as in backing away a little bit. This is actually why I corrected myself earlier, because those are two different things. That increases by 25%. Now, as nice as 25% damage is, unlike this, which could say extra reload speed versus extra damage, it actually also has knockdown and stumble power, which is a bit odd. They've literally crammed so much into Shock Trooper that I can easily see why you would pick this over that one. However, again, I'm not sure if it's just my bias on this one because I like the reload speed, but I think they've lowered this a bit too much. If it was something like an extra 25% damage and weapon switch speed maybe, I don't know, but this is just too obvious, especially when it comes to the Demolitionist things which are only one shot and then you reload. In fact, the starter pistol, the grenade launcher and the RPG are all one shot. And also the underslung grenade launcher on the rifle is one shot, then you reload. You know what? Yeah, I think I've made a decision here. Because of how much the Demolitionist reloads, in fact they reload more than any other class, why wouldn't you pick this one? It's just something you use whether you want to or not. It's not like you can fire a few shots and then just go, okay, now I'll reload. You reload all the time. All the time. And knockdown and stumble speed, too goddamn useful. I don't think this is much of a choice anymore now I've thought about it. This is just too goddamn useful. And then of course, right, increases direct hit damage with explosive by 20%. And increases the maximum ammo for explosive perk weapons by 5. Now, having extra ammo is really useful for this, but if you play it right, you can actually manage your ammo quite efficiently. However, this. Look at this. 25% damage. Now this has to be direct hit, bear in mind, but 20% damage, that's the difference of 5%. If you're accurate with the explosives, that's a 5% difference from this, and sure, you could stack this and be really, really good, but bear in mind, what Zeds does that affect? The only Zeds you don't one-shot with explosive weapons are bloats, sometimes sirens if you get bad hits on them, Skrakes, flesh pounds and the boss. So if you can actually do the boss, you can just switch to that, but bear in mind that compared to that, this is too obvious a choice. An extra 5 ammo? Who gives a fuck? 20% damage with direct hits is amazing. This is the first time I've really actually gone through all of the perks and thought about absolutely everything. When it got to tier 2, but I think the Demolitionist, when it comes to perk choices, not very good. This is too obvious a good choice over this. Extra 5 ammo? Who cares? I mean, as I said before, if you've got like a support guy, you get an extra ammo anyway. Alright, enough about that. So, your explosives are immune to the Siren Scream and will always explode. Versus increases area of effect of explosive perk weapons by 50%, but decreases damage by 30%. Now, again, there is one enemy of the Demolitionist, and that's the Siren. That just fixes that. Of course, you can just say as long as you keep your distance, that will never be a problem, because they don't scream unless they're within a certain range of people. Now, of course, in emergency, if you're surrounded by Zeds, that means that the siren isn't screaming, meaning you can't do anything. The last thing you want is a siren point blank. You can't shoot them with anything other than the assault rifle, or you time it, which, again, difficult. Now, the thing is, this, an extra 50% area of effect, but 30% less damage, I would say that's terrible unless you're playing on, I don't know, normal, because you're going to have to take out big tough Zeds. That's just how the game is, and 30% less damage is awful. I mean, you could say, well, what if you kind of counter it with this? Well, then you've wasted your choice. Never take something that's 30% less damage. If that said increases area of effect by maybe 100%, I would say that's worth it, but 50% extra area of effect isn't a huge amount when you think about it. So you've got a choice of reduced damage and increased area of effect versus countering the one type of enemy that really fucks Demolitionists over. This is too obvious a choice. It's an incredibly good choice, but bear in mind, what I have heard people say about this is obviously there are a lot of classes that, or perks should I say, I did say I'd keep one of the classes, but there are some perks where they have a kind of counter Z, like a one type of Z that's really good against them and they find it hard to beat. This completely counters it out, and a lot of people have said they don't like this at all because Demolitionists should have this one type of Z they find hard to beat, just like a lot of other classes, and that counters it out. Personally, I think, again, this is too obvious a choice to pick. It's too good. This is too bad. It's so obvious to pick this one. I don't think this is just my bias, I honestly think this is just too good, and also I'm kind of on the side of some of the people that says this is just overall too good. You're countering the one class that Demolitionists find hard to beat. Or the one Z, should I say, not class. Right, I think I've said enough on this one. Let's go on to the next one. Increases damage of direct hits to critical areas of effect with perk weapons by 50%. So, if you hit them in the head with stuff like a RPG or grenade launcher, extra 50% damage. That's really nice. However, the alternative increases reaction, stun, stumble, and knockdown. Bear in mind, that is all 4 types of things you can do to a Z other than damage it and kill it, obviously. Increases the power by 50%. Now, this is such a massive stack of options, I can't see why you wouldn't pick it. Because bear in mind, even if you're really good, you will miss. 50% damage is a lot, but you will miss at times. What it does mean is with Flesh Pounds and Scrakes, when they're just very casually walking around, you could potentially one-shot them. With increased damage, you could one-shot them before they get angry, and in some of the more difficult settings on this game, that would be amazing. Imagine a Scrake turns up before he starts charging, RPG to the face, dead. Problem solved. That's very good. However, increasing the power of that by 50% to all 4 types of reaction you can get from a Z, that's just really good. But again, this is, even though I think this is just amazing, I do see that this is probably my bias coming in about how much I like this, because if you've actually got really good aim, that is amazing. You can literally just start cleaning out the tough Zs with that one. So again, this is a difficult choice to make, because even I'm having a bit of difficulty thinking, well actually that one is pretty good. So these are the kind of choices you want, like these ones up here, but this is just a whitewash. These ones are just so good. And of course, during Z time, your explosives dish out a massive radiation damage, poisoning Zs, and explosive rounds will explode at any range, which means you can point blank RPG somebody with this. It's only during Z time though. Now, it doesn't say how much the radiation damage is damage-wise though, bear that in mind. However, poisoning them, I'm guessing it's the same as the medic, which basically means over a few seconds they sort of go green and actually start taking damage. Again, we don't know how much it is though. During Z time, you shoot and reload in near real time, and the area of effect of perk weapons increases to 25%, and explosive rounds will explode at any range. Now, this is the same effect, so when comparing these, forget these last bits are actually included, because they're on the same one, it doesn't matter. So when we're trying to pick which one, we're getting this either way. So, dishing out radiation damage and poisoning Zs is basically what you get for this one. Or, shoot and reload in real time, area effect increases by 25%. Someone tell me why dishing out radiation damage and poisoning Zs is better than increasing area effect of perk weapons by 25% and shooting and reloading near real time. Because it's not. This is just crap. This is amazing. Once again, the Demolitionist needs some work, because this isn't just my bias here, this is just way better than this. Mad Bomber every time, Destroyer of Worlds, completely useless. So it's really not much of a decision there if you ask me. So, Firebug, again, perk weapon damage, perk weapon reload, very useful. And of course, resisting Z fire damage, that's as you'd expect, like the explosive resistance with Demolitionist. This makes husks a lot easier to deal with. Now, immunity to your own fire, that's eventually going to get to 100%. I had to do a bit of a cut there to do the maths, I'll be honest. But yeah, that's very useful. And increased starting ammo, again, very good. These are good passive bonuses. As for the skills, now, increases damage by 35%, or increases fuel tank capacity and magazines for all perk weapons by 100%. This basically means you don't have to reload as much, but the fire damage you get isn't that massive. As a Firebug in a team game, you're more expected to take out the smaller Zeds. So again, this is actually a good choice to make, because do you want the extra damage, or do you just want to burn things more? That's a tough one to make. I can see why you go either way, but as someone who, when playing by myself or with teams, obviously when I'm not doing a review, I play on a high difficulty, which means the damage, I find that too useful not to pick. But again, that's my choice. This is a good difficult choice to make. Again, it goes to playstyle mainly, but that's the whole point. You shouldn't make the choices so dumb like in Demolitionist. So, perk weapons burn for 150% longer, and the damage over time they burn for increases slowly. So this is good for the tougher Zeds. It means you can just burn them a little bit and then run away. Now, ground fires do massively increased damage and reduces Zed movement speed by 20%. Now, the reason I don't like this one is not only do I not know a huge amount about ground fire, but the only ground fire I can see is if you either missed your shot or your Molotov has just hit the floor, which obviously even if you hit a Z, the damage spreads out, so you can actually just slow Zeds down by 20%, which the burn effect, I think that's too useful. Obviously with the smaller Zeds, that you're going to kill them quickly anyway, but with the larger Zeds, then you're going to be doing a lot of damage to them, even when you're reloading, when you're running away from them, like backing away, retreating or whatever. I think that's just really good. Whereas ground fire, the reduced Z movement is very useful, but I think for this to be a valid choice, you need to have it at least 50%, because bear in mind, this isn't if the Z is on fire, this is if it tries to walk over the fire. So I think I don't think this is a very good choice. I think this is too good a choice over this one. Now, if this was something like reduces movement and increases stumble, that would be very good. That would make a lot more sense, especially with the icon. It would make a lot of sense if the Zeds try to come up to your fire and kind of stumble back thinking, oh, I don't want to walk through that. And then if they decide to walk through it, then it slows them down. So if it was even, say, increases stumble by 20% and Z movement speed reduced by 20%, that would make it a really good choice. I just think that, I don't know, just slowing them down, that's not good enough. That's just, for only 20%, it's not good enough. That's a bad choice, I think. I think barbecue is too obvious. Now, burning Zeds that make contact with other Zeds will light them on fire and burn lasts 150% longer. That's good for spreading out the fire, because especially if you spread your fire over several Zeds, then some other ones come in contact with them. Especially, it's going to happen more often if the burn effect lasts longer, because someone could actually be on fire for quite a while and keep bumping into his friends. Zeds you kill with fire have a 20% chance to explode, damaging and knocking down nearby Zeds. I love this one a lot, because blowing more Zeds up, I love explosions, what can I say? This is a difficult choice to make, and that's good, because spreading the fire around without having to use up your ammo, that's brilliant. And of course, the extra burn damage if you get this one stacks well with this one, because you're setting loads of Zeds on fire and they're all slowly burning to death. This one, it's only 20%, and bear in mind, Zeds you kill, and with fire. If somebody else shoots a Zed that you have on fire, and it's their shot that kills them, it doesn't make them explode. And even if you have a Zed on fire, you switch to a pistol, shoot him in the head, it doesn't explode. It's only if you kill them with fire. So it can be quite limiting, but if you're a Firebug, unless you're using a pistol, everything you are killing with is fire. Okay, apart from your pistol and melee, everything is fire. I think that as useful as this is, it is quite easy, especially if you're in a team, for someone to actually steal your kill, because obviously you get the XP either way, but it's very easy for someone to cut you out of this bonus. So I think that's still a difficult choice. I think it's reasonable to get stuck between the two. I actually like the choices being difficult. I don't think obvious ones like, say, this one are good, but just bear that in mind. Read them carefully. It's very easy, and 20% chance isn't bad, but it's very easy someone can just take that right away from you, and then all of a sudden you think, well, why did I pick this skill? It's just not going off very often. Soloing, I think this is really good to pick if you're soloing, because no one's going to steal it away from you, and 20%, if there's a ton of Zeds coming at you, then it's going to go off on one of them, and then great, you've just knocked down a bunch of Zeds. Zeds struck at point blank range with fire will stumble back. Pretty much everything you do will make them stumble. This is a guaranteed stumble. Guaranteed. And the other option is increases range of perk weapons. Now bear in mind, you actually don't have much range at all with these guns. It's actually quite easy for a Zed to be out of range without you realising it. The range on the fire weapons isn't that bad, it's just not very big. So bear in mind, this is a big complaint I have about all the skills. Increases range by... oh, you didn't tell us how much increases the range by. If it said increases range by 100%, damn, that's actually really good. I can see why you'd actually pick that over that, because nothing's going to get in point blank range of you because you've killed it from miles away. But again, it could be by 20%, 50%, it doesn't say. So for me, when I get to this, I would obviously pick this one. Okay, I would test this, I would want to see what the range is, but bear in mind, this is a 100% guarantee to stumble back Zeds at point blank, and if you're getting melee to death, being able to just flame something in the face and have it stop hitting you, brilliant. As someone who is more of a defensive player, I would find something like this a lot more reassuring if I knew that if something just started hitting me, that I could make it stop. So I would pick this over this. I think it's going to be more of a tough choice if it actually specified what the range increase was. I think it's a big critique I have about a lot of the descriptions that it doesn't say, it just says increases a lot or just increases. You have to put the numbers in for players to make a good choice here. Because I mean, let's just say it increases the range by 5%. Let's just ballpark some figures here. Let's say it's by 5% and someone gets to level 20 and they think, you know what, this Firebug choice at level 20 is crap, I don't seem to be getting much out of it. Well, of course you're not, the increase was 5%. Of course we don't really know what the increase is, but if it doesn't say, then how can you make a reasonable choice? So for me, Heatwave is the obvious one, but again, if the range is really good, perhaps it makes it more of a difficult choice, but again, we don't know right now. So for the Z time, you attack with perk weapons in close to real time and never run out of ammo. That's really good. That's... oh, of course, as I mentioned before, in close to real time, so what speed? Does it mean you're attacking at 75% speed? 80%? 95%? 99%? Again, we don't know. It has to specify. I can't see why, considering the people who make this game have the exact numbers. It's not like they don't know. Bear in mind, they have to code all this stuff in, so if you've picked this option and Z time cuts in, they have coded in what your attack speed changes to. They have the numbers. And if it's more of a case of, well, it's still in early access, they're changing it a lot, it's not difficult to change what it says on this little bit of text here. The only thing you need to worry about is forgetting to do it, but please put the numbers on. We need to know what the numbers are. But either way, it's still really good, especially in the not running out of ammo thing. Now, any Zeds hit with fire are slowed by 30% and take 50% more burning damage. Now, I think what that means is the burning over time, not more fire damage. Otherwise it would say fire and not burning. I could be wrong, but that's probably what it is. This is more of a skirmisher pick, which, considering you're slowed by movement, so attacking in near real time, that's really good. It means you can still pump out a huge amount of damage, and you never run out of ammo compared to Zeds hit with fire are slowed by 30%. Very good defensive thing, by the way, which is part of the reason why I like it, and taking more burning damage, which means that if you're not hitting them right now, they're still burning a lot more, and increasing damage over time, very good. So this is actually, I would say, a difficult choice, and is more down to playstyle, which is good because some of the other choices in like Firebug aren't actually that great. So Gunslinger, again, weapon damage, of course. Bullet resistance, that's only good for bosses, but it is useful. Movement speed, I love classes with movement speed, it's so goddamn useful. Recoil, essential for Gunslinger, considering like your accuracy can just fly up to the roof if you don't control your gun properly at lower levels. It can be really annoying, so having recoil effects in the passive, really good. And then Z time reload speed, if you've not seen it already, like I'm level 19 and obviously this is going to get faster, but just see how goddamn quick you reload in Z time. It's ridiculously fast. Especially seeing as I have increased reload speed. Now, here's your options. Ignore movement speed penalty for iron sights and drastically reduce weapon bob for perk weapons. Now, what this means is your iron sights are basically the sight when you look down the top of your gun, so that's when you're aiming. So you can go around fully aiming in and you're running at top speed. Now, the thing is about this is the aiming on the guns, it's not a big deal, it's not that useful, because bear in mind you can go from aiming between two guns to only aiming down one of them. However, I would say this is a good pick if you're also going for rack 'em up, but I'll get there eventually. Because the other option for this is ignore recoil penalty for shooting from the hip, which is very useful and increases movement speed by 5% and switch perk weapons 50% faster. This again could be a personal choice, but they've now stacked too many things into this to beat it over this. Obviously it's not a huge movement speed increase, but it's very nice, and this is very good if you're going for rack 'em up. Now you don't have to do this, but if I pick rack 'em up, I like to only carry one pistol for it to be nice and accurate. This allows me to fight at a lot longer range. So, going to these two, what is rack 'em up? Consecutive headshots with perk weapons increases damage 10% to a maximum of 50%. Now I have tried this out, and you do get a little indicator on your screen as to where you're at. Now, this does decrease over time. It doesn't tell you that, but it does. So if you shoot 5 Zs in the head, your damage is boosted to 50%. If you stand there, it'll go 4, 3, and it doesn't tell you that because it should. Now this is good because, say, a Scrake starts walking along, you go, uh-oh. You shoot 5 little Zs in the head, your damage is boosted to 50%, then just go ham on them. Just shoot that Scrake down because you've got 50% extra damage. Unlike other perks, where it just tells you how much damage increase you get, you actually have to work for this one, which is why I picked this one. Increases damage by 20% and inflict 30% more damage to arms and legs. Now, in case you didn't know, you actually do less damage to arms and legs, regular damage to a torso, and more damage to a head. Now, look at this. That's a 50% damage increase. Very good. You have to work for it though. You have to actually get the headshots and it runs out. This, straight up, 20%. There you go. You have to pick the skill. Which is why I think this, unless there's some particular thing you're going for with this, which can be fun, I think this is an obvious choice. Now, there could be bias with this because, again, this is a playstyle choice. I think Bonebreaker is too obvious. And sometimes you can always miss a bit and maybe accidentally hit something in the arm and leg. That kind of compensates for that kind of miss. It actually gives you more damage. Bear in mind that 30% increase, I don't know this for certain. All I know is that it doesn't mean you do more damage to arms and legs than the torso. You do not do that. However, it may mean it increases the damage up to the normal amount you're doing to the torso. So let's say you do 100 damage to a torso with a shot. It doesn't mean if you shoot them in like the arm or leg with this bonus you start doing 110 damage. It does not mean that. It either means it brings it up to, say, 90 or to 100. So it doesn't mean more arm and leg damage, it just means it either gets it up to the amount of damage you should be doing to the torso, or it's not as much of a reduction, if that makes sense. Now for this, line them up. Suffer no damage reduction from shooting through Zeds to hit other Zeds with perk weapons. Now, here's the thing, it doesn't say what the penetration is. Let's say you had 100 Zeds in a line, and you killed them all with one shot. This does not mean you will kill 100 Zeds. That's only if you have 0 penetration reduction. However, for me, increase reload speed, yes please. Especially seeing as, I think, I could be wrong with this, it could be maybe Sharpshooter, but I think Gunslinger has the smallest amount of ammo per clip of any class. And of course you've got stuff like the exploding hammer for Berserker, that's only got 5 shots in a clip, but that's for the special attack. Whereas you've got things like 5, 6, 7 and 8, is it? For all the Gunslinger guns? I know they go up by 1 each time, but just think about that. You've actually got... Or does it go down? I don't know. I haven't played Gunslinger in a while. I don't really focus on this. But the point is that the Gunslinger has very small amounts of ammo in its guns, because bear in mind, they're just pistols, they're not assault rifles. So reloading is something you do a lot. So this can be a difficult choice. I think this is an okay choice to make, but for me, again, playstyle choice, and I just think it makes a lot more sense. Reload speed, every time. So for this, critical hits, headshots with perk weapons slow Zeds by 30%. That's so goddamn good. It means you can just keep shooting them in the head and it takes them a lot longer to actually get close to you. It would be nice if Sharpshooter had that, but this is still good. Now, Shooting sprinting Zeds in the legs massively increases knockdown power. Now of course everyone has knockdown power to shoot something in the leg, but it's actually very small. Now again, this says massively increases, it does not say by how much. It could be by 50%, it could be by 20%, we don't know. Again, they need to specify what the numbers are. Shooting Zeds in the chest with perk weapons massively increases stumble power. Again, it doesn't say, but what this means is I would say on higher difficulties, it's basically playing a game of chance. If a Scrake is running at you, you could say, well, he's slowed by 30%, guaranteed as long as I hit them in the head. That's the safer option. This, again, is playing with the numbers, so if he's sprinting at you, you could shoot him in the leg and go, well, I'll risk the knockdown power. Maybe he'll just fall over and stop charging me. Or you could say, if you're just shooting him in the chest, so I guess legs or chest, then he might start stumbling and actually stop charging at you, but he won't fall over. This has the greater effect of the two, because of course, I mean, at a higher level, if it's just the basic Zeds like clots, you're going to shoot in the head and kill them anyway. So this is basically tougher Zeds. What do you want to do? Do you want to guaranteed slow them down, or do you want the chance of having greater effect on them, but it might not happen? Just bear that in mind. It says words like massively, but it doesn't say how much. Personally, I would play the numbers here and go with this, because having a Scrake running at me and then falling over rather than just running slower by 30%, that's so much more useful. I would go for this, but I think this is an okay choice because it's like, do you want to go for the safer option or the riskier one? The one with a lower effect, one with a higher effect. This is a tough choice and that's good. So, during Z time your perk weapons can't run out of ammo. My god, that's good. However, having seen this firsthand, increased reload speed and the passive reload increase, not running out of ammo as good as that is, that's actually two weapons. You're holding them dual wield. You reload them so fast, it's like a second and a half for some of the longer ones. You reload them so quick, I think running out of ammo isn't a big deal. Now, during Z time your perk weapons will shoot 3 times faster and reload in real time. Reloading in real time, that's what I was talking about. Reloading your guns, both in real time and in Z time, is really quick. I mean, it's quick anyway. When you reload in Z time, it's even faster. So, shooting 3 times faster is really nice, but the reload speed is really quick anyway, so I think this is kind of a tough one for me because not needing to reload at all is great, but being able to shoot 3 times faster, I don't know. One thing I will say though, if you can't click the mouse very fast, don't pick this one. You shoot as fast as you can click the button up to a certain limit. Now for me, I've been playing FPS games since I was a little kid, so you may notice in my other videos that I switch to single shot, then actually start firing really quickly. That's because I'm just spamming the click button. It's not difficult to do, but it takes practice. So if you don't have the practice, don't pick this one, because you won't get the 3 times bonus because you're not clicking fast enough. So again, that's a difficult choice, and quite an interesting one I think. So, Sharpshooter. I think probably the fewest bonuses out of all the classes. Now, headshot damage, of course, however, what they aren't going for is weapon damage. All the other ones have perk weapon damage, this one doesn't. It just has headshot damage. But bear in mind, 1% per level. 25% headshot damage at max level, that's a lot. Recoil. That's actually recoil reduction. Because just saying recoil at 8%, that's stated as an increase. That's what that means right now, but it isn't. Because basically, if you go into the technicality of the English language, saying recoil 8%, then, because it's going up per level, if you said recoil 8%, that's basically a reduction, but because it's increasing per level, so eventually that'll say 25%, that's implying it's going to be an increase, but it's not. Basically that means that you're getting 8% less recoil than you would otherwise. God, I'm being picky about that, but I just feel like I have to mention it because that can be confusing. I know it's probably very obvious to most people, but if you actually just look at that as it is, it doesn't say recoil reduction. Okay, anyway, I'm going to move on before I just start, going crazy. So, weapon switch, 16%. That's interesting because you wouldn't weapon switch very much as a sharpshooter. I think that's kind of wasted here. In fact, if anything, out of all the classes in the game, I think this is the class that needs night vision. You might think, well, 2 classes have night vision. Yeah, but they don't need it. You know who does? You know how dark maps get? Imagine trying to snipe something the other side of the map in the dark. That is difficult. You know who could really benefit from night vision, like the other classes that have it? Sharpshooter. Give Sharpshooter night vision. That's what I think, anyway. Weapon switch speed, I mean, alright, it's there, but if anything I'd say what Sharpshooter benefits from most is things like reload. You could have it. Here's another bonus you could give to Sharpshooter. Iron sights movement, as in how quickly do you start looking down the gun, because if you obviously start aiming, you don't instantly go into iron sights. There's a small amount of time where your character starts putting his eyes into the iron sights. It's not very long, but you know what would be really good? Something like instant iron sight switch. That would be really good. There are some other games that actually have this as like a bonus you can put in, but Sharpshooter would benefit from that so much because of how often you go into iron sights. But anyway, so increases damage by 25% while stationary and using perk weapons versus increases shooting speed by 25% and movement speed by 10% while using perk weapons, of course. This is more of a playstyle thing. I think this is totally fine. This is a good choice to make because if you stand around a lot and snipe, which, you know, sniper and it's Sharpshooter, then that's fair enough. I actually move around a lot while I play, so I wouldn't benefit from the damage, whereas getting a movement speed, again, this is incredibly useful, especially at higher difficulties. And of course, the shooting speed by 25%. This is really good, especially with the Winchester, because it's actually quite tricky to chain Z time as a Sharpshooter. Because, I mean, if you shoot once, you have to shoot as soon as possible and get a hit, otherwise you don't get the Z time increase. But if you have increased shooting speed, if you miss the second shot, you've easily got time for another one to actually chain the Z times. That's really useful. This one on the right, Marksman, this is a personal choice. I think this is really good. Sniper, that's also very good, because it's like guaranteed damage as long as you're standing still. But this is a playstyle choice. This is actually a decent choice to make. So, increases damage by 30%, movement speed by 50%, and reload speed by 20% while crouching and using a perk weapon. That's really good. However, if you compare it with Ballistic Shock, increases stun power of perk weapons by 100%, that is really good. However, for me, I would pick this one, again, playstyle choice, I move around a lot, but this. Now, there are a lot of maps where you don't have as much of an option to stand still all the time. Now, if you're playing in a team game, you'll often have an option to stand still a lot and just stand at the back, possibly next to your medic, and take the shots and get the bonus. However, the reason why this has a lot of options over this one, which is just one, is simply because, look, if you want all of these bonuses, you have to be crouched. You move really slowly while crouched. Yeah, you can move a bit, but if all of a sudden you need to start legging it, all these bonuses go. They all go. The only way you can get them back is if you start crouching again and limiting your speed. And at lower difficulties, this is obviously a lot better than this one. But at harder difficulties, if you need to start running, you need to run. You cannot stay crouched. Even with the extra crouching speed, you need to just run like hell. At both the difficulty and playstyle choice, I think. So again, this is a good choice. Now, this one. Each consecutive headshot with a perk weapon increases damage 10% up to maximum 50%. My god, that's good, especially when you've got really good aim. Now, increases reload speed with perk weapons. I know I say it every time, always reload speed, but this is really down to weapons, because crossbow, for example, that doesn't reload that fast, and having reload speed on a crossbow, especially with the railgun as well, my god, that would be useful. But at lower levels, realistically, if you've got using the Winchester, this is really useful, and this is probably one where I may say I'd actually pick Rack 'em Up over Tactical Reload. Because sure, your reload isn't that much, but bear in mind you reload shot by shot, and you can easily cancel out of the reload and start shooting again, especially if you're shooting faster. This is actually a really tough choice for me to make, and I like the tough choices. Unlike Demolitionist, which is just a mess, this is again a tough choice. All of these so far have been tough choices, and that's good. So, Deadeye. Reduces recoil by 10%, increases headshot damage by 10% when using iron sights with a perk weapon. This means quite simply that you get an extra damage bonus on potentially on this, but your other option is 25% more ammo for perk weapons and grenades. That, I would say, isn't as useful because this is why. You don't have a huge amount of ammo with the sharpshooter, however, the whole point of that is it's compensated by the fact you're supposed to be repeatedly shooting them in the head, which means if you go for this, that's an extra 50% damage you can stack up to, but not only are you getting better recoil, which means it's easier to hit somebody in the head, you're getting increased headshot damage when you're aiming down the sights, which you're probably going to be anyway. I know sometimes I like to run around and just hip fire my sniper rifle and stuff, but that's just me. If you want to use the perk properly, then you're using the iron sights. Which means I think that if you're... Well, again, this is the thing. If you're like not as practiced with sniping and your aim isn't that good, I would say go for this because you're going to need it. If your aim is good and you really want to focus for those headshots, pick this one. Again, this comes down to skill and playstyle which one you pick. It's still a good choice though. Now for Z-Time, any headshots with perk weapons have a 5% chance to trigger Z-Time. During Z-Time, increase headshot damage with perk weapons by 35%. Now, if you're in perk time, shooting headshots is incredibly easy. What it means is Z-Time is going to happen 5% more often. So, that's incredibly good. And if you think about, like, these are the choices you picked here, if you stack 35% on top of that, you're going to kill all the tough Zeds incredibly quick, especially at the high difficulties where you need that extra damage just because of how tough they are. The alternative, any headshots with perk weapons have 5% chance to trigger Z-Time, so again, it's the same option as this. They kind of cancel each other out when it comes to picking the choice because you get it anyway. During Z-Time, your headshots with perk weapons stun any Z. Now, you go for the kill or you go for the stun. Now just to clear up any confusion, the stun means they will stop moving and kind of hang their head down and you get the kind of glowy effect around their head. So whatever they're doing, they will stop doing it. This increases to things like husks trying to shoot you, they'll stop. Flesh pounds raging, they'll stop. Or am I wrong with that? Can you actually stun a flesh pound while it's raging? Someone clear that up for me in the comments. But basically, you can just chain stun. So if you want to go for the extra damage, like 35% extra damage, and try and kill them really quick, especially when you're in Z-Time, because you can probably shoot them in the head anyway, repeatedly, so you're going to get that bonus damage. Or do you want to go for the stun and basically just make sure they're constantly stunned. However, bear in mind, that's only in Z-Time. You may be able to stun them, but as soon as Z-Time cancels out, they've got, I don't know, a couple of seconds worth of stun left before they just charge after you again. Personally, I would go for this one because as good as stunning them and cancelling what they're doing is, you're basically going for an option of just killing them right out. And if you stack it with the rest of these, my god, you're going to be doing, let's say you've stacked it up to 50%, that's 60%, 95% bonus damage. Wow. If you really are racking them up, and you've got Deadeye, when it comes to Assassin, 95% extra damage is ridiculously big. Again, this is a personal preference one. I would go for this one, and I can see why some people would go for this one, but that's a good choice. That's probably the toughest Z-Time choice I've seen so far. Now, SWAT, the newest class. Perk weapon damage, of course you have. Bullet resistance, we're seeing this again. I don't know, I think bullet resistance is fine, but I think it's a bit less creative just to chuck it on. Magazine size. Now, I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Commando, you've got the increased amount of ammo per clip. This is a passive increased mag size. It seems like they're taking all the bits for potential LMG perk class and kind of spreading it out. If you do put a perk class in, please give them increased mag size and all that sort of stuff as a passive. And weapon switch speed. This is an odd passive to have. Also, SWAT would be a bit of a fun class to put night vision on just because it kind of is a bit fitting for the SWAT. Basically the SWAT is the British Police Special Forces, so it would make sense. But yeah, these are fine things to have. I think weapon switch speed is a bit odd, but sure, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, while you have body armor, you only take health damage from sonic attacks and clots can't grab you. You begin each game with 50% armor. This is great. This is a nice little extra thing to have, as long as you have armor though, which means if you lose all your armor, you have to buy an entire set of armor. Or, you can kind of alter your purchases and buy everything else, leave armor till last, and just have a bit of armor. Because I know earlier in the game, I don't like buying armor until a few waves in, because I just feel like it's a waste. because it's very easy for the Zeds to chip away at it. Now, of course, if you're very careful, you can keep that 50% armor for quite a while. Now this, no movement penalty for using iron sights or crouch move. This is also very good. This is again down to a playstyle choice, and I think this is a tough choice to make because having no movement penalty is incredibly useful, as well as having the body armor. So, as for this, close combat training, this is the same as Commando, extra pistol and knife damage. Why is it in the game? Because when it comes to ammo, you're getting more ammo passively by leveling up, and reload speed, goddamn, I just love my reload speed. As for equipment, increases stumble power by 100% with all perk weapons versus carry up to 30% more ammo for each perk weapon. Now, SWAT does bleed ammo pretty damn quick because all of their weapons are rapid fire or burst fire. I think there's only one you can actually put on single shot, or maybe two. But either way, when it comes to the ammo, you're just burning through it because each bullet doesn't do much damage, which means swapping to single shot is more of a thing you do for the base clots, cysts and crawlers. It's not really useful for much else. Personally, when I play SWAT, I just leave it on rapid fire all the time and just tap, because you can tap one or two bullets out quite easily if you just tap on auto fire. 30% ammo, very useful, but I think stumble power is just so much more useful. It's 100% stumble power with all perk weapons. So again, this is a reasonable choice to make. It's personal preference, which is good. Now onto this bit. Maximum armor increased by 50%. You begin game with 50% armor, which stacks with armor gained from heavy armor training. Now, you know what's odd about this? It specifically says it stacks. All the other options in all the other perks that stack, it doesn't say it stacks, only this one says it does. Maybe it's because it's the newest class that they just got around to actually, pointing that out, but 50% increase in maximum armor, and you gain 50% extra armor at the beginning, which stacks with that. So you start with 100 armor, we stack it with that. This basically is a good addition to the other one. So, the other option is multiple hits with perk weapons will slow Zeds down by up to 30%. Hitting the legs is most effective. Now, multiple hits, you're pretty much going to be firing on full auto anyway, so getting up to 30% isn't going to take much. So, here's the thing. You don't need 150 armor. You don't really need it. It's good, don't get me wrong, but to slow Zeds by 30% is so... I can't really state how useful it is. So, again, this is more of a playstyle choice. You can tell I've got more bias to this one. I think it's a lot more useful, especially on the higher difficulties, but it's up to you really. I think it's a reasonable choice. Now, battering ram. During Z time you move in real time and have massive knockdown power when you run into a Z. Or, during Z time when using perk weapons you have unlimited ammo, shooting near real time and increases stumble power by 100%. I cannot state how much better this is than the other one. The only real things I can see here is that says massive knockdown power. If that's at 100% knockdown power, I'd say that's really good. What it means is as soon as you pop into Z time, you can get out of anything because you just knock all of them over. That's so good if it was 100%, but it's not. Massive knockdown power. This is the wording I'm getting stuck with. That's basically you have a chance to knock down people who are in your way. I really hope it is actually 100% knockdown power, because it doesn't make it incredibly clear about that. Of course, I can't test it, I'm not level 25, so someone post in the comments if they know for sure. To compete with this one, that has to be 100%, it just has to be. Because if you're ever surrounded by Zeds, you pop Z time, get away, easily get away. Because of course, you move in near real time, even if you aren't surrounded by Zeds, that's still quite useful because, especially in the harder difficulties, when the Zeds are right in your face, and you pop Z time, you can get your distance. You can get away from them, you can heal up, you can reload, whatever. Whereas this, yeah, just stumble power by 100%. Obviously, it says increases the stumble power, which means you won't stumble them every single shot. But you can basically just shoot a load of them in the face, they'll all stumble backwards. That could give you your chance to actually dart out and escape if you're surrounded. But unlimited ammo, yeah, you can just go ham. Because he's shooting in near real time as well, which means, again, it doesn't say how much the speed is changed by. But you can just spin round, shoot all the Zeds in the face, and then leg it. So that's what you asked for, and that's basically my opinion on everything so far. You've heard what I think is good and bad about the class skills and the perks, and of course the passive bonuses you have. I still think that, yeah, this is an early access, but there's a lot of little tweaks they need to do, especially with demolitions, but that's all I've got to say for now, so thanks for watching, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.